2 months after my wife Maggie passed away, our dog Duke started digging in the exact same spot beneath an old magnolia tree in the backyard every single morning. My son-in-law, Travis, would stand there, a forced smile on his face, and say, "Keep that dog away from this corner. He's going to ruin my project." 3 nights later, Duke disappeared. When he finally came back, his paws bloody, and rushed to dig in that exact spot again, I uncovered something my own family had buried, to destroy my life forever. The morning Maggie died, the house didn't feel empty right away. It took about 2 months for the silence to become something I could actually hear. I'm Robert Calloway, but most people call me Bob. I'm 71 years old, a retired carpenter, born and raised in Savannah, Georgia. For 43 years, I swung a hammer for a living, and the only thing I ever built that truly mattered was the life I had with my wife Margaret, my Maggie. She passed in January, pancreatic cancer, 9 weeks from diagnosis to the end. The doctors said some people go fast. Maggie went fast. Those first 2 months after the funeral, I moved through the house like a man walking underwater. Everything was slow. Everything was heavy. I'd reach for 2 coffee mugs out of habit, then stand there holding the second one like an idiot, not knowing what to do with my hands. The one thing that kept me anchored was Duke. Duke is a golden retriever, 5 years old, big and gold and built like a small couch. Maggie picked him out from a shelter up in Augusta when he was 8 weeks old. All paws and ears and absolutely no sense of personal space. She loved that dog the way some women love their children, shamelessly, without apology. She used to sneak him pieces of her cornbread under the dinner table and pretend she wasn't doing it, even when Duke had crumbs all over his nose. After she was gone, Duke slept at the foot of my bed every night. Not because I asked him to, just because he did. It was on a Tuesday morning in early March when I first noticed something odd. I was standing at the kitchen window, watching the sun come up over the back fence the way I do most mornings, and I saw Duke out in the yard. He was in the far corner near the old magnolia tree Maggie had planted the year we moved in. He was digging, not playing around, not scratching at something small. Really digging, both front paws going hard, dirt flying up behind him. I pulled on my boots and went out. "Duke, hey Duke, come on now." He looked up at me, tongue out, tail wagging, perfectly happy with himself. I looked down at the hole, maybe 8 inches deep, about the size of a dinner plate. "What are you doing, boy?" I crouched down and looked at the dirt. Nothing there. No bone, no smell I could pick up. I filled the hole back in with my boot, patting it down flat. Duke sat beside me and watched me do it with great interest, like he was studying my technique. "Come on inside," I said. "I'll get your breakfast." He followed me in, ate his bowl clean, and I forgot about it until that afternoon. I was out on the back porch reading the paper when I heard him scratching again. I lowered my glasses and looked over. Duke was back at the same corner, same spot, digging away like he had an appointment to keep. "Duke?" My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. He stopped, looked at me, then looked back at the hole, then back at me. "No," I said firmly. He sat down. I went back to my paper. 5 minutes later, the scratching started again. I filled that hole 3 more times that day. That night, I sat in Maggie's armchair, the green one she always claimed because the light was better for reading, and I talked to Duke about it, the way you talk to a dog when there's nobody else in the house. "You miss her, don't you?" I said. It wasn't really a question. Duke was stretched out on the rug, chin on his paws, watching me with those big amber eyes of his. "That's her spot. You know, that corner under the magnolia. She used to sit out there on Sunday afternoons, with her sweet tea and her seed catalogs." Duke's tail moved slowly once, like a pendulum winding down. "I miss her too, buddy," I said. My voice cracked a little on the last word. I cleared my throat, pressed my knuckles against my mouth for a second, and looked away at the window. The yard was dark outside. The magnolia was just a shape against the sky. I told myself Duke was grieving the only way a dog knows how, digging where her scent lingered, going back to the last place he felt her close. I'd read somewhere that dogs can smell things that happened weeks ago, trace the memory of a person right down into the earth. That made sense to me. That was something I could understand. I went to bed thinking I'd give it a few more days. He'd move on. We both would. But Duke didn't move on. The next morning, he was back at that corner. Before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee, I watched him through the window. That same methodical digging. That same quiet determination. No barking, no excitement, just work. I went out and filled the hole again. "You're going to turn my whole yard into a crater," I told him. Duke looked at me, panting lightly. Then he turned and walked about 6 inches to the left and started digging again. I stood there with my coffee going cold in my hand and watched him. Here's the thing about Duke that I noticed over the next several days. The thing that started a small, uncomfortable feeling moving around in the back of my mind. He wasn't digging in different spots. He wasn't chasing a smell that wandered. Every single morning he went to the exact same point in that corner. Same distance from the fence. Same distance from the tree trunk. Like he had a compass built into his nose, and he was checking coordinates. By the end of the first week, I'd filled that hole 11 times. 11. I started keeping count on a notepad on the kitchen counter because I'm a carpenter, and carpenters measure things. It's how we make sense of the world. On the 8th day, I tried putting a flat stone over the spot after I filled it in. Duke moved the stone with his nose, then dug underneath it. On the 10th day, I tried a plastic storage bin turned upside down. Weighted with a brick. Duke pushed the bin aside. It took him about 4 minutes and dug underneath it. On the 11th day, I just stood there and let him dig, and watched him work, and tried to figure out what it was he thought was down there. His paws were precise. He didn't flail. He didn't scatter dirt carelessly the way dogs do when they're just having fun. He dug in a tight circle, going deeper each time before I stopped him. And he always stopped at the same point, like he'd hit something. He recognized something that told him he was close. I got down on one knee and put my hand into the hole after he'd been at it for a few minutes. The dirt was darker down there, denser, and there was a smell I couldn't quite place. Not rot, not animal. Something almost chemical. Faint, but wrong. I stood up, brushed the dirt off my hand, and looked at Duke. He looked back at me with those amber eyes, chest heaving, dirt on his nose. "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" I asked. He wagged his tail twice and started digging again. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen to find my daughter, Caroline, already there. She was pouring coffee, looking tired. "Morning, Dad," she said. "Rough night?" I just grunted. Caroline was a good kid. Always had been. But since Maggie passed, she'd been leaning heavily on her husband, Travis. Travis, my son-in-law, was a smooth talker, always had a scheme. He'd been pushing me to sell the house, move into a retirement community. Said it was what Maggie would have wanted. I didn't believe him. That morning, Travis came out to the backyard. He saw Duke digging, and his smile faltered. "Bob, what is that dog doing?" he asked, his voice tighter than usual. "He's going to ruin my new pool project." Travis had convinced Caroline and me that a new pool would be a great investment, a way to enjoy the backyard more. He'd even started marking out the area, right near the magnolia tree, the same spot Duke kept digging. A few days later, Duke disappeared. I searched everywhere, called every shelter, but nothing. I was heartbroken. 3 nights later, I heard a scratching at the back door. It was Duke, his paws bloody, exhausted, but alive. He rushed straight to the magnolia tree and started digging again, with a frantic energy I hadn't seen before. This time, I didn't stop him. I watched as he dug deeper and deeper, until his head was almost completely submerged. Then, he let out a sharp bark and started pulling something out. 3 heavy, plastic-wrapped bags. They were filled with stacks of what looked like money. My hands trembled as I picked up one of the bags. The bills felt off, too smooth, too perfect. I knew what counterfeit money looked like from my days as a carpenter, when I'd sometimes get paid in cash for small jobs. This was good, very good, but still wrong. I looked at Duke, then at the hole, then at the bags. A cold dread settled in my stomach. What was going on? I knew I couldn't go to the local police. Travis had friends everywhere, and I didn't trust anyone. I remembered a conversation I'd had with Maggie years ago about a bank on Bull Street, 2 blocks from the First National branch on the corner of Broughton. I'd chosen this branch deliberately. It was the one farthest from Travis's usual territory, a location I'd never been to, with him, never mentioned to him. I walked in when the doors opened at 8:30, the sandwich bag in my shirt pocket, my heart doing something uncomfortable behind my ribs. The lobby was quiet at that hour. Marble floors, that particular hush that banks have. A teller behind the counter, who looked about 22 years old, greeted me with a smile that said she'd had training on friendly customer service. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" "Morning." I pulled out the sandwich bag. I found a bill in an old jacket. Wanted to make sure it's good before I spend it. She took the bag, slid the bill out with practiced hands, and ran it through a currency verification pen, the kind that leaves a yellow mark on real money and a dark mark on counterfeit. The mark came out dark. I watched her face go carefully neutral in a way that told me she'd been trained for exactly this moment. "One moment, sir," she said pleasantly. "Let me grab my manager." She pressed something below the counter that I couldn't see. 2 minutes later, 2 of the longest minutes I have sat through in my 71 years. And I once sat through a 3-hour county zoning hearing. A woman in a charcoal blazer came out from the back offices and extended her hand. "Mr. Calloway?" she said. "Robert Calloway," I said. "Mr. Calloway, I'm Sarah Collins. Would you come with me for just a moment?" She had a firm handshake and steady gray eyes and the particular composure of someone who has walked into difficult rooms many times and learned not to show the cost of it. She led me back through a door marked "Staff Only" and into a small conference room. Round table, 4 chairs, a whiteboard on the wall with nothing written on it. She set the bill on the table between us, under a small ultraviolet lamp she pulled from a desk drawer. Under the UV light, the bill looked different. The security strip that runs vertically through genuine currency glowed a particular shade of pink. On this bill, the strip didn't glow. It looked dull, faintly wrong, like a photocopy of a photocopy. "This note is counterfeit," she said. Straight and clear. No softening. High quality, professional grade printing. Not something a hobbyist makes in a basement. She looked up at me. "Where did you get it, Mr. Calloway?" My mouth was dry as sand. I told the teller, "Old jacket." "Mr. Calloway." Her voice was quiet, but firm, the way a doctor's voice gets when they need you to stop saying what you rehearsed and start saying what's true. "My name is Special Agent Sarah Collins. I'm with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. This bank has been working in partnership with our office as part of an active counterfeit currency investigation in the Savannah area. When a bill like this comes across their counter, they contact us. I need you to tell me where you actually got this note." The floor seemed to shift slightly under my feet. I put both hands flat on the table. "FBI?" I said. "Yes, sir." She didn't reach for a badge. Didn't make it dramatic. Just steady. Directing. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I thought about Harry, my neighbor, saying, "You're not doing this alone." And I told her the truth. All of it. Duke digging for weeks. Travis building the pool. The camera I'd installed. The blood on the fence post. Duke disappearing and walking back from God knows where. The 3 bags I dug up yesterday afternoon. Agent Collins listened without interrupting once. She had a small notebook open on the table, but she barely wrote in it. She was watching my face, reading me the way investigators read people, cataloging details behind those steady gray eyes. When I finished, she clicked her pen closed and looked at me with an expression that was professional and human at the same time. "Mr. Calloway, I believe you," she said. "Everything you've described is consistent with what we've been building for 4 months. Travis Hendricks has been on our radar since January." She paused. "I need to tell you something that's going to be upsetting, and I need you to stay steady when you hear it." My jaw tightened. "Go ahead." "We processed the exterior of one of those bags last week. Our team has been monitoring your property as part of the investigation. The fingerprints on the packaging material are yours." The room went sideways. I grabbed the edge of the table. "That's impossible," I said, and my voice came out raw and cracked like old timber. "I never touched those bags until yesterday." "I know," she said, "but someone touched them while holding your hand. Transferring prints. It's a technique. Rare. But it exists. We call it a secondary transfer." She leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Calloway, someone has been very deliberately building a case to frame you for possession and distribution of counterfeit currency. That carries a federal sentence of up to 20 years. 20 years. The words landed in my chest like a stone dropped in still water, ripples going out in every direction. I pressed my knuckles against my mouth and breathed through my nose hard until the spinning slowed. Travis, I said, we believe so, but belief isn't evidence. She folded her hands on the table. What is evidence is the camera footage you mentioned, Mr. Calloway. That footage could be critical. I need you to go home. Do not touch those bags again, and do not let Travis know you've been here. Can you do that? Yes, I said. My voice was steadier than I had any right to expect. Good. She slid a card across the table. Plain white, just a phone number. Call me tonight, after you've reviewed your camera footage. I drove home in a daze. The world outside the car window seemed distorted, unreal. My own son-in-law, framing me. It was a betrayal so profound it felt like a physical blow. When I got home, Harry was waiting for me. He saw the look on my face and didn't ask questions. He just sat with me while I pulled up the camera footage. The video was chilling. It showed Travis, late at night, digging in the exact spot Duke had been obsessed with. He was wearing gloves, but then, in a moment of sickening clarity, he pulled a pair of my old work gloves from his pocket, put them on, and carefully handled the bags, as if transferring my prints. He then buried them, meticulously covering his tracks. The blood on the fence post, that was from Duke, who Travis had clearly tried to get rid of, probably to stop him from exposing the truth. I called Agent Collins, my voice shaking with rage and a strange sense of vindication. She told me to stay put, that they would handle Travis. The next morning, the FBI swarmed my property. Travis was arrested, looking shocked and bewildered, as if he couldn't comprehend how his carefully constructed plan had unraveled. Caroline was devastated, but even she couldn't deny the evidence. Later that day, Agent Collins brought me something she'd found during their search of Travis's belongings. A USB drive and a single index card in Maggie's handwriting. Those rounded loops, those slightly left-leaning letters, I would know anywhere. My throat closed completely. My love, the card read. Press play when you're ready. You know me. I always did prefer to get the last word. I made a sound that had no name. Harry's hand covered mine. Caroline pressed both hands over her mouth, tears already spilling. Dot, my other neighbor, had stopped trying to hold hers back entirely. Harry opened his laptop. I plugged in the drive. One file. I double-clicked it. Maggie's face filled the screen. She was sitting in the garden chair by the bird bath, sunlight moving softly through the leaves behind her. Thinner than I remembered, tired in a way she'd always tried to hide from me, but her eyes bright, steady, unmistakably her. "Hi, Bob," she said, and smiled that crooked smile. "If you're watching this, Duke did his job, and I imagine Harry is sitting next to you, being insufferably smug. So hi, Harry." Harry let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "I found out about Travis 14 months ago," Maggie continued, folding her hands the way she always did when she meant business. "I couldn't prove it, and I couldn't tell Bob, because, sweetheart, you would have walked straight to that man's door and said exactly what you thought, and someone would have gotten hurt. So I arranged Duke through a retired narcotics officer who owed me a favor. He's a trained detection dog. I just needed you to trust him long enough." Caroline whispered, "Mom," and broke apart entirely. I grabbed her hand across the table and held on. "Caroline," Maggie's voice dropped soft and warm. "You didn't fail. You survived. That's everything." Then she looked directly into the camera. "Bob, you are the best man I have ever known. You're going to be okay. You and Duke and Caroline and Harry. I love you, Robert Calloway. Every single day." Her voice caught just once on the last word. The video ended. Duke put his paw on my foot. "I hear you, Maggie," I said to the ceiling, to the garden, to wherever she was. "I hear you." Caroline pressed her forehead against my shoulder, shaking. I held her the way I had when she was 7 years old, and the world was too loud. "She protected all of us," Caroline managed. "Even from the grave." "That was your mother," Harry said, voice rough and certain. 100%. Outside, the magnolia tree caught the last of the evening light, wide and steady and still. Maggie had gotten the last word after all. I smiled through my tears and meant every bit of it. Looking back at everything that happened, the sleepless nights, the trembling hands, the tears I cried into Duke's golden fur, I keep returning to one thought: God doesn't always send angels in the form we expect. Sometimes he sends them with four paws and muddy claws and a stubbornness that outlasts every obstacle you put in their way. If there's one thing this family story taught me, it's that love doesn't end when someone leaves. Maggie was gone, but she was still fighting for us. Still 3 steps ahead, still protecting every person she cherished. That kind of love doesn't die. It just changes form. But here's what I want to say to anyone listening. Don't be like me. Don't wait until the ground beneath your own home is hiding something dangerous before you pay attention to the quiet warnings. The slight furrow on your wife's brow, the dog that keeps returning to the same spot, the son-in-law whose smile never quite reaches his eyes. Family betrayal rarely announces itself. It creeps in slowly, wearing the face of someone you trusted at your own dinner table. My personal opinion, the people most capable of hurting you are the ones you've already let inside the door. Watch carefully, love generously, but never confuse loyalty with blindness. This has been our family story. Messy, painful, and ultimately full of grace.